it's interesting because on the West Coast, everything is a little bit more laid back. People are a little kind of whatever. They smile at you if they don't know you on the street. Where in New York, it's very much like, what the fuck are you looking at? Like, it's, there's a tension, not necessarily bad. Like I've lived in New York for a while. I did a season on Broadway in 2016, and
That's
had a fun
insane.
time with that. Yeah, it was super cool. I mean, so granted, I did not get the pedestrian regular New York experience of living like in a closet with four other people and doing the stuff. Like I had a nice apartment on like just on the edge of Hell's Kitchen, and I was there for 2 months or something like that. It was amazing.
You were living the Joey Tribbiani life, except actually being successful.
Definitely that. Right on. Well, thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it. This is going to be a cool conversation.
Of course, man. And like, I always try to be able to pick at other artists to kind of figure out like what their creative process is and what goes on in their head. Because I think every single person and every single one of us has different stories. We have different places
Hmm.
of how we got there, things that inspire us and things that keep us going. 'Cause let's be real. Life can be a fucking pain in the ass sometimes. Like, even when you're successful, even when you've got everything together, like, it's always throwing you those fucking curveballs.
Oh yeah, absolutely that.
Always. Doesn't just end.
100%, dude.
How did that work out for you? Like, have you run into that or not really?
So absolutely, I have, and it's so being a creative, being an artist these days. It's an interesting life. I feel it's a very rich life. I've lived a lot of them. I've had a lot of pretty amazing, crazy, awesome experiences. But the trade-off point for that is I have been unable to make a full-time living up till this point doing my art. My so day jobs and kind of serial careers sort of based upon my interests. I was a high school teacher for 5 years. I during COVID, when everything shut down because there was no performance going on, I ended up working with FedEx for 2 years, loading and unloading aircraft and stuff like that. All of that stuff has financed my creative endeavors to a point. I have had for the last 20 years my professional experience in terms of creativity. I have made a living being a professional magician. And that's what I was doing on Broadway. I was in a show called The Illusionists Turn of the Century. And it was a recreation of a magic show that you might have seen in the golden age of magic around about 1903. So big, amazing costumes and braggadocious mustaches and
The handlebars. Yeah.
stuff like that. Precisely. The handlebars, live orchestra, the whole thing. That has been not lucrative, but definitely supportive and great. But it's been a balance point between finding the time and the energy to be creative after having put in a full 40 hours during the week. And in terms of the curveballs, yeah, something you think is going to come through, you work on it, and it's great, and then everything falls apart, and it's like, well, I've done all of this work. So that is kind of put into my mind, it is much more about the journey than it is about the destination. And I am inspired to rapidly go after small sequential goals as opposed to doing that American thing of fulfilling my dream, which, if it's big enough, it's going to take most of your life. And hopefully you've not ignored the journey because the destination is kind of hollow if you have.
I think it's really bizarre because there is this attitude and idea in this country of the American dream.
Hmm.
And I don't want to be one of those that just like, poo-poos on it, and shits all over. But truth be told, there really is no such thing as like even, having the dream.
Huh.
This idea or this notion, and again, there are many people that do this very successfully where, they make that YouTube video like, oh, I'm doing this full time. I'm bored. I don't know what to. I feel the same way as watching a television show like Family Guy when I see those
Yeah.
videos. Because it's completely unrealistic. Like you said, it's a lot of the times it's like being able to have a balance. It's something I've done on this podcast and having a lot of people on is we notice a pattern, which is that
Yep.
a lot of the times to endeavor your creative life or to figure out your passion, sometimes you have to be able to balance it out. Maybe do a profession like your case, magician, or some people, believe it or not, it could be even like plumbing. It could be a
Yeah.
creative
Right.
endeavor for them. Like there's all different directions, but to have that in your head, like, okay, I'm gonna build up my YouTube channel, like I'm gonna post all of my music, like I'm gonna go out to New York, I'm gonna meet all of the producers, and like I'm gonna. Please don't waste your money.
That was a very big difference in between that I noticed in between East Coast and West Coast, because in LA, especially if you've lived there, you understand everybody's fake in LA. Everyone is always working on stuff, and like if you meet someone at a party, I was watching some
I know
this
which.
might have been
Yeah, yeah.
this might have been an SNL sketch where they were like, if people were going to be honest at parties in LA, and someone comes up and he's like, "Hi, is anyone here able to help further my career?" No, okay, go fuck yourself. And then he took off and went to the next spot. Everyone is sort of doing that. Like at least the East Coast, you guys are very real. You absolutely let people know how you feel and where you stand in terms of that, and it's kind of refreshing. And so yeah, I don't know. It's I'm not about putting up the front and showing the world everything that I'm doing and trying to have some sort of a status thing. And I think digital status is definitely a thing here in 2025. You know, it used to be in the 80s and 90s, it used to be big cars and the whole thing. And now it's showing off all of that stuff for everybody every hour of the day. And it's exhausting. I don't know how young people do it. Aside from, you know, an entire generation being hollowed out and depressed all the time.
Yeah, and the thing also to touch on, right, is a lot of the times where you're trying to balance out, life and passion and creativity.
Hmm.
For example, in my case would be being in vocational school or sometimes having that 9 to 5 or whatever have you. And then having those times where then you just have 2 or 3 days, maybe even one in some cases.
Hmm.
And that's all of the time you got. And a lot of the times you just don't have the energy or the mindset. And then the problem also is like we don't have Neuralink in our brain, but smartphones are just as bad, like just as embedded as they would be in our brains. So it's
Yep.
like got this balance of addiction to technology, the balance of being creative, the balance of keeping yourself financially stable, and then keeping your mental health in check all at the same time.
It's a lot, man. It is a tall order. And I can tell you that, you know, I've got two kids, two teenagers. You know,
God
my son
bless
just
you.
turned
Jesus.
18. You know what? They're amazing, wonderful, caring, brilliant human beings, and I love spending time with both of them. I have not had that teenage experience that most of my other friends have just been like, I don't know what to do, and we don't talk, we hate each other, and they're horrible, and I don't understand anything of their life. Like that's not me. So I, one, have gotten very lucky, and two, I have worked my ass off over the course of the last 14 to 18 years in fostering that kind of a relationship.
I think I think what also has to do with, and again, I'm not giving any discredit to parents. I'm not
Mhm.
really a parent. I just have a cat, if you consider that being pet parent.
Of course.
But
You
when,
can have an opinion about
yeah,
kids when not having kids. That's fine. That's
but I think it's really interesting, right? Where in your instance, and I've noticed this, especially with some artists, where they'll raise kids and they'll have completely different experiences than other parents. And I think a lot of the times why that is because you have kids that are raised around a very open and loving environment. And they're
Yep.
around already like freakiness and weirdness as it is. Like, come on, we've all had like so that in itself incorporates where as they get older and obviously like things happen, there's like a whole like song by Ozzy Osbourne called Changes for a reason.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah. So when you have that environment for your kids, even when they're going through the difficulty and the depression and the changes and all that, they don't feel as isolated. They don't feel as
Mhm.
closed off from you. So I'm just assuming, but they probably talk to you a lot more about things.
Absolutely, they do. And you know, it's interesting. I had not thought about it in exactly those terms, but I think you nailed it. Having been brought up in an environment that values art, and you know what is art, but self-expression of the artist filtered through a given medium. Um, they have been able to see just how supportive the music community is with musicians and bands and going to live shows and having all of that. And when you're feeling isolated, chances are there's a bunch of other people who are feeling similar. And if you're able to connect with them, all of a sudden you're less lonely. Shared pain is lessened, shared joy is increased. And it's been a pretty amazing experience. And of course, curveballs, bumps on the road, things that some mornings as a parent, I will wake up and be like, I'm sorry, what happened last night? Okay, and then we're going to deal with that and sort of figure it out. But it has never been
Too much.
adversarial. It's always
No.
them and me against the problem instead of me against them. That's not how it works out here. And I think art has absolutely a role to play in that.
I think also something that I've learned and something I've just experienced is you have this level of fear where you see this pretty much in every single generation. You had back in the 60s, everybody was complaining about the new generation and how they were too progressive, how they were thinking too deeply, or how.
Right.
And then you have the 80s that come around and you get grunge and you get punk and you get hard rock and you get metal and like, oh my God, what are you putting safety pins all over your body? All that kind of stuff. But you notice that there's a pattern over here, right? It's like every single 10 to 20 years, we're always complaining about the new generation. We're always
Mm-hmm.
complaining that technology is getting too dangerous. There's always a complaint, there's always a problem, and you always could point at like, oh, it's either the teenagers, it's either technology, oh, it's people are too lazy, or the. And then you have to think to yourself, okay, so then how much of that is actually true?
Mm-hmm.
Because it keeps on repeating itself over and over again in just different flavors of ice cream, like Baskin
So
Robbins. Yes.
so Penn Jillette of Penn and Teller, he oftentimes on a podcast and interviews he says one of the questions that he likes to ask people is how do you think things are going in terms of the world right now, and there are two truths about that question. He says the answer, everyone usually 99.9% says things are getting worse. They're progressively getting worse. And then the second thing is everything is demonstrably better now than it was previously in generations. It feels like everything is crazy and out of control. Murder rates 100 years ago, way higher than they were now. The fact of you in an industrialized Western country today, your chances of being murdered with machetes, pretty low in comparison to what it was 100 years ago, 50 years ago.
Unless you're in
Kidnappings.
Iran, but yeah,
Un-
yeah,
unless you're in Iran, absolutely. And I mean, that's uh, I'm speaking, making a generalization about
right,
Western
no.
industrialized countries, but yeah, it things are consistently getting better in terms of our health, and we're living longer, and we're doing okay. But everyone thinks everything is getting worse and worse and worse and worse, and it's a push and pull. And I think breaking out of that cycle of the fear, because it's all about fear, like you said. Everyone is afraid. When my mom, when she found out that I was getting into heavy metal when I was a teenager, she shared with me that when she heard about a band called Metallica back in the mid '80s on the news, she was afraid for me, for her newborn son, that he might find that and then be led down the wrong path. And it's like, well, yeah, that happened, and I feel like I'm better for it.
And
Things
it's like
things are great.
Metallica's not even that hardcore.
Mm-mm.
That's the
Everything
funny part.
is progressive, you know.
Yeah, it's hilarious because like you then fast forward maybe like what 10 years later and you get Rammstein,
Yeah,
which is
my
like
favorite band of all time, by the way. Just
love
they are
Rammstein.
consummate, amazing artists, and I adore the stuff that they do. The controversial things they produce, and they do that on their own terms, and that's it. Super mad respect for them.
People think about like for example, I'm in the automotive industry and I
Mm-hmm.
one of those I love German cars. I just there's something just so incredible about
100%.
there's something about Germany that like people just don't understand. Where yeah, they're kind of like New Yorkers. They're a little cold. They're a little bitter. They're a little hard to break the crust.
Mm-hmm.
But they're some of the most fascinating people you'll ever meet in your life. And the fact that you can have a group like Rammstein, which, in my personal opinion, they kind of invented electronic metal to what it is now. They were kind of like
Absolutely.
the beginning pioneers of this. They did it in German, and people don't know this. They did this in traditional German. So there's different
Yeah.
dialects of German. They use traditional German.
They use Hochdeutsch. Yeah.
Yeah. So first off, really difficult to write because if you ever seen German, it like takes up an entire line of a page as one word. And then they're figuring out how to make when metal already was kind of new. They came out in like '94. Like metal kind of came out like in the mid '80s, early '80s, barely. That to me is like insane creativity right there.
Absolutely. And just like the best artists who are able to, define, certainly in the German speaking world, and I would argue in the world in general, they have defined sort of a voice of their generation in terms of that sort of industrial sound. Um, all of that was synthesized through their experience and because of that. And if you listen to their earlier albums, if you listen to Sehnsucht, um, when they get into it, like, if you're track four,
Yeah, yeah,
Bestrafe mich,
yeah.
it sounds like a factory. It is so perfectly timed and rhythmic
The
and just
beat
sort of marching forward. The beat, yeah,
and that echo that plays in the back slow.
it's really cool.
My
It,
God.
it's really cool. But yeah, so them in comparison to Metallica, and even like if you're looking at the same time, Slayer was out at the same time. Slayer was way scarier than Metallica ever was.
Yeah, and even in the same time period, you had like Korn and Tool, and then you
Hmm.
had on the opposite spectrum like Pixies and then Nine Inch Nails. Yeah,
Yeah.
and okay, it's hard to understand this, but back then they all kind of gave that grungy, dark. Their like band emblems were like insane, but they were all like completely different. Like
Hmm.
you think it's scary, and then it's Nine Inch Nails. You're like, oh okay, like, I could bring my 9 year old to this. Can't
Yeah.
do that with Korn or Tool. It doesn't work that way.
It's yeah, different experiences lead to different performances and the whole thing. You gotta pay attention to what's going on and what you're comfortable with.
What is also really bizarre is like I collect vinyl records,
Hmm.
and one thing I've noticed about Rammstein, especially like their album Sona and some of their older albums.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay, so if people are not familiar with this, in the art world, there's what's called basically like music gouging, where when artists produce an album, in the case they didn't make very many because they obviously weren't very big,
Hmm.
you'll have these greedy people that will buy all of them. They buy all, go on Discogs, you can see this. It's usually just one or two people that own the entire catalog.
Yep.
And then what they do is they'll charge $4, $5, $6,000 because where the hell are you supposed to buy it? They own all of it. And that kind of stuff kind of pisses me off just a little bit to the point of like, not only are you abusing another artist's work, you didn't even make that work. You're just a lazy piece of shit sitting on a couch that just decided to have a genius idea and you're taking advantage of it.
You're investing in the worst sense of the word,
Yeah.
because you were not giving back to the community or doing something. So interestingly enough, there's a weird offshoot of that here in Portland, and that's with shoes, specifically with like athletic shoes. When athletic shoes, there are people, I've met lots of people actually, who when a new exciting line of athletic shoes comes out, that Nike is here, Adidas is here, they will buy up as many as they possibly can of the limited release, and then they will wait 5 or 10 years, and they've been doing this as a cycle for 30 years at a time, and then they will charge 4, 5, 6, 7, 10 times what they were worth initially to be able to do that. And that's what they do. They are investing and gouging the market in terms of shoes, creating scarcity on purpose in order to drive the price up later. And I'm like, how is that contributing to anything?
It's and it what's wild? Like the same thing goes with band t-shirts. I was watching a video
Yeah.
that there's a large group in the United States, particularly in the middle of the country, where you have these people that they bought out tons of old band t-shirts. A lot of times you go on eBay and places try to buy them. You ever notice how expensive they are? It's
Hmm.
because a bunch of these dudes bought up all the freaking t-shirts at these concerts and now are charging like $300-$400. And what we kind of forgot, and I'm going to get into this, especially with live venues, especially with concerts. It used to be where you can go see Korn for like $5. You stand out in a field and you're just like with a bunch of people, and like maybe there'd be a mosh pit if you're lucky. And then they'd have their own merchandise and stuff that you could buy, and it was pretty cheap, maybe $6, $7. You pick up a CD or whatever, and it kind of helped with the revenue as they were kind of doing their
Yep.
tour
Yep.
around the United States. And then you have now years later where people are literally abusing the stuff that they use to keep themselves afloat so they people can actually afford to come to their events, which now is completely
Yeah.
unrealistic because of Ticketmaster and all that bullshit.
100% that. Yes.
Oh, it's my
I
favorite
saw
pumpkin.
in in 1997, I saw Blink 182 right after their
Wow.
first record dropped, and I saw them with a bunch of other people, Pennywise and Guttermouth and the Mermen, and it was at like a festival at a ski area in March, and so there was snow everywhere and the whole thing. And they had a stage. It was awesome. Had a fantastic time. Tickets $12, and Blink 182's last concert when they decided to tour, thanks to Ticketmaster and thanks to these people who have set everything up to buy as many tickets as possible and then resell them, it's like $4,000 a ticket for one. And it's unrealistic. And, normal people have been priced out of being able to go to live music for bands that are on that level. I would have enjoyed to see them here 30 whatever years later, but that's not going to happen. And I'm certainly not going to be paying $4,000 for a ticket to do so.
It costed. So I live out here in South Florida. And I went to see Blondie 2 years ago.
Uh-huh.
$155.
Dude.
When it First of all, Debbie Harry.
Wow.
Debbie Harry was fantastic, but it pisses me off because me and Debbie Harry come from the same state. We're both from New York.
Okay.
And I know for a fact when my mom was around, because my mom is about the same age as Debbie Harry, when she was living in New York back in Brooklyn, and she went to see a concert with Blondie, she probably would have paid back then maybe $10, maybe $5. But I paid $155 to be in a tiny little orchestra thing or whatever you want to call it, like Opera House, in West Palm Beach, all the way on the top. I felt like I was gonna fall out all the way down.
Right, absolutely. It was that extreme, that rake angle.
For $155. That just...
So, part of it is the fact, yes, inflation is a thing and it happens, and it does cost artists money to tour, and so they have to be sure that they're going to try and make a profit as they're doing it. But the issue is all of the middlemen that are coming into that and taking care of it, and especially if you're on a record label like Blondie is, depending upon what those original contracts looked like, if they forwarded you, if they fronted you money to be able to do it, you don't earn anything as an artist until all of that has been paid back, and then they're going to take their cut of everything, and it's just an uphill battle. Super random side note, I saw Blondie in Romania in the early 2000s for what the equivalent then would have been probably like $1.50 American. She was on tour and came through a city called Cluj-Napoca, and I have found that if when I was in Eastern Europe, if those big bands came through, they adjust their ticket prices so that locals are able to do that, and the exchange rate was crazy. So it was a good show. So $155 for you and $1.50 for me. Sorry, dude.
No, it's all good. But honestly, on the other side of that, you have artists today, even like Youngblood, which a lot of people shit on him because there's the comment of oh, he's a wannabe Ozzy Osbourne, and he's taking Ozzy Osbourne's, all that kind of jazz. And honestly, I think he's a really fantastic artist. I don't think there's anything wrong with the man. And I think what was really cool was he had a concert that he did out in the UK where he didn't go through Ticketmaster. He completely made it localized, and he was explaining on how he did this so that he can bring in his own merch. He can bring in some other locals to maybe be able to sell food and stuff. And there wasn't really any seating. It was just in the middle of a field. But that's the point, right? Where, there's economy and inflation and all that, but there are artists that can make the choice to do that or not to do that.
Well, here's the thing. If enough artists made that choice and we all banded together in doing so, it is going to change the landscape of the economy and how that is going to be functioning. It's incredibly difficult, especially because the venues also they're being strangled by Ticketmaster as well. Ticketmaster has contracted with a bunch of venues that say you can only work with us. Otherwise, we are going to freeze you out. And those venues don't want to close. That's somebody's livelihood. And it is a pretty toxic landscape in this country, especially, but sort of in the Western world currently when it comes to stuff like that. And so trying to figure out how to make that work and move forward.
Well, because I think it's really important when it comes to music. Yes, there's a lot of different ways to experience music. You could do it through your phone. You could do it through an iPod, CD, vinyl records. You could watch a YouTube video. I don't know about you, but there's something about live music.
Oh, yeah. 100%. In fact, I think so. I've had a bunch of conversations with people over the course of the last probably 6 months, and in that time, it has been sort of identified that, especially with AI music coming into it, which we haven't even gotten into,
Oh, we will.
um,
Oh, we're gonna get
things
in there.
things
Damn it.
that are happening online are sort of becoming the standard of how people do that. And I see a time pretty quickly here where live music is going to be the revolutionary reaction to that and a form of protest. That no, we're not going to do anything that is going to be uh, uh, done just online. It's going to be done live, and if it's going to be done live, like, there's a balance in between the two, and definitely figuring out how to take care of making that happen. But it's live music, there's nothing like it. And if we are able to figure out a way of doing live music and then including people who can't make it into that situation digitally, but without, doing so responsibly, I think that would be like the sweet spot and the perfect way of putting everything together.
It really would be, and like honestly, to be able to even go to, I had was this last year or was that a year and a half ago? There's a there's a band from Belarus. They're
Yeah.
called Molchat Dolma.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and they came to the United States, and I was like following them, and it turns out like they were coming out to Florida, and I was like, oh my god, this is gonna be amazing. So I bought my ticket. It's like in this tiny little plaza, like right before downtown Fort Lauderdale, and there's like
Yeah.
this big line. And the thing is, like, I'm not from Europe. I obviously know that there's Eastern and Western European culture. The thing that a lot of us don't understand is certain parts of Europe, especially like the parts that are part of the USSR, they're still very Soviet, like
Mhm.
very Soviet. And you have this group that just comes up on stage. They look like they came out of one of those like factories, making cotton and
Yep.
copper. And they get up there and they're just singing, and you don't understand a word that they're saying. But I guarantee you, there's something about that you cannot recreate in a live stream. You cannot recreate that with AI. It's just so raw and industrial to where they are from.
Hmm. That's it.
That's it.
My fiance is Russian, and so she grew up in the Soviet Union, and definitely getting some of the artists that she has shared with me over the course of our relationship have been super interesting in terms of getting that point of
Yeah.
view. And it was a different world. It was a different, I mean, for a long time, rock and roll was outlawed. It was illegal, and you listening to it or being caught with it would end you up in prison.
Or Siberia, which
Yeah, absolutely that. So I don't know, what, absolutely wild, and good for them for getting out there. I think they're coming to Portland on their next tour, is what they had announced, and
have
I
you
hope to
seen
see them. My daughter loves them,
have
actually.
you seen them?
I not live. I've not. No.
You have to see them live. You have to. First of all, I think your fiance is gonna love it.
Yeah,
I know Belarusian is different than Russian. Like I know Ukrainian and Russian are a lot more similar than Belarusian. Um,
it's close enough.
but I just that's just a testament of time, right? Because I think what we kind of forget is yes, we have AI, we have all these technologies, but at the same time, you still need to have human interaction. You still
Hmm.
need to be able to have human input. I'm gonna go completely off subject for this just for a
Yeah,
sec. We are,
hit me.
if you look at space aviation and space in regards to like just exploring our known universe, we have
Sure.
all of these autonomous probes that have gone to deep space. But if anything goes wrong, wait 24, literally 24 years.
Hmm.
This was what happened with Voyager. They literally had to wait like something like
Right.
18 to 20 years until it was able to get fixed. So you're always going to need some level of human input. Yes, probably we will change and integrate or be. Everything changes and progresses over time. That's just a fact of life. But
Of
this
course.
notion and idea that we will go completely extinct and AI will take over, whatever technology will take over, you still need humans to a certain point.
Yeah,
It's human designed.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
I agree with that. I think that it is to to completely erase that factor. I mean, That's everyone's fear, right? That's we've all read enough sci-fi, I'm sure, to be able to have a vision of what's going on. If you've ever seen The Terminator, that's it right there. That AI has become sentient and then sees the humans as a threat. And there's some really interesting conversations going on now. I know that some of the guys who formerly worked with Google in developing that have been like, it's learning so fast and we don't know how to control it. But it's coming with a perspective of fear with that. And I think we're going to be around, and human intervention is a necessary, I don't want to say necessary evil, but it's a fact of life, at least for the time being. And if that changes and humans are no longer necessary and they start getting exterminated, well, I probably won't be around, so it's all cool.
What I think, though, also people forget, right, is a lot of these advancements in technology has allowed even, for example, synthesizers, or
Right.
I forgot the terminology, but those keyboards where they use AI and software technology and hardware, where they get to be more meticulous. So if you're an editor or an engineer and you're working with one of these
Mhm.
machines, you have a lot more to play at your fingertips, which
Even just Yeah, I was gonna say even just the fact of that's I just blanked on the word. Pitch correction for your voice when you're singing, auto tune. When they introduced auto tune as an algorithm to be able to take what you've been singing and then to digitally match it up to what the pitches are actually supposed to be. So long as a singer, so long as you get close enough, what is recorded versus what actually comes out in the final product is polished. It comes out sounding way better. And there was a whole reaction against that. When I was young, when autotune was first being used, of people being like, I don't want to be fake. I actually have to do it or not, and it's going to live or die off of that. And I don't know. You can discuss the ethics of that if you really want to get into it, but it's using that as assistive technology. That's cool. I would like AI to be able to improve my life, not steal my art and not put me out of business, but how about figuring out how to do my taxes and make my life better? Should I get cancer? Give me some means of being able to take care of that without doing chemo and all the invasive stuff. And we'll end up treating it like having a cold. Hey, how was your weekend? Well, I had some cancer this weekend, but it's better now. That's a great use of AI. Let's do that.
yeah, and it's also where this okay. There's also this idea of where jobs, and this idea of like things will be completely eliminated.
Hmm.
And I'll tell you straight up, as from like the industry that I'm in, like for example, even with podcasting or even for example automotive,
Hmm.
what's basically happened is that you then have one person that's able to do multiple jobs, because
Right.
15 years ago, for me to do this, I would probably need a staff of maybe 3 or 4 different people.
Of course.
Today, I can pretty much do this by myself. And it's the same thing when it comes to automotive. It's where instead of you needing to have 4 or 5 people doing multiple different types of jobs on a vehicle, you can have pretty much one person that's like certified and skilled to a degree where they could do the job of all the people.
Hmm.
So it's not eliminating or destroying jobs, it's making jobs more efficient, right? Doesn't it make more sense that you can have somebody that can seamlessly do 5 or 6 things in one go around than versus having sometimes 6, 7, or 8 people doing all of those things to
I'm
make it work?
I'm just hoping that the compensation is going to be adjusted for that. If there were five
Oh,
jobs, like that definitely sucks for the four people who are not going to be able to do that any longer. And if the one person can be more efficient, but you know what, you're going to burn them out four times as fast if they're doing that and they're not having the additional support on the at the goal line on that in terms of being compensated and making sure that they're happy and capable. It's one of the things I love about the Germans is they are very big on making sure that their workers are supported and taken care of and have got the proper time off and family leave and the whole sort of social thing that goes along with it. They're wicked efficient for a reason.
yeah, there's a reason why I don't work for any American companies. Like, and I'm not trying to be critical of American companies, but in the sense, especially in the industries that we work around,
Mhm.
a lot of what we've been discussing and a lot of this information of how bad it comes from these companies. Okay, because
Hmm.
let's be real and honest. All right, a lot of these music houses, production, in regards to filmmaking, when it comes to a lot of these American companies have destroyed communities.
Yep.
They've they've literally destroyed environments and communities and cultures, like to the point where you have areas that just are barren and it's completely abandoned.
Look at Walmart.
So you then ask yourself this question then, okay, who are the people that are pushing all of this stuff of like it's the end of the world? And they are. But yet, in this great country, and you're on the West Coast and you know this, where you have a lot of companies, even from Germany or even from Japan or from Asia, that are coming in and they
Hmm.
manufacture and build here in the United States. Their companies are fine and they're thriving.
Yep.
They, Nobody's really complaining. So then you have to ask yourself the question. Then is like, it's not us that's the problem.
Yeah.
They're the problem.
Yeah. It's, the whole system of, and we don't have to make this into a socio-political, economic discussion
No, we're just talking
necessarily,
about
but
art.
yeah, exactly
Yeah.
that. The whole sort of the paradigm of capitalism is unchecked growth, and there is no end game for in terms of profits. That if you're here, the system is designed to just continuously go and go and go and go and go. And if you put that into a biological context, what happens when you have cells that just grow unchecked and don't ever stop? Well, it's called cancer, and that it consumes the host, and that's the end, man. So I don't know. I think there's a balance, and in systems where there is a balance, there is a much deeper support of artists than trying to find a way to monetize everything that you do. Because art, at its baseline, art's a human behavior. It's an expression of what it is to be alive. And it's great when you can monetize that. It's great when you can make a living doing that. But there's got to be balance involved in that, like we were talking about earlier.
Especially when it comes to sound. Because again,
Yeah.
I'm not trying to criticize when you take German sound manufacturing and the
Hmm.
like Bang& Olufsen, you have in, for example, in Japan you have tons of these amazing companies. And then, if you look at a lot of modern artists and musicians today, they don't really use a lot of American audio
Hmm.
manufacturers because they're overpriced, they're not that great, and a lot of the times they're kind of crap. You know, Again, I'm not trying to criticize, but like think about mentality, right? If you have people that are working for these brands, like you said, there's no check balance of power and culture. There's no
Hmm.
real attitude or intention of keeping creativity, keeping a structure. What do you think is going to happen?
Yeah. If there's a void, that void is going to get filled.
Oh my god.
Oh man.
That's why, like, I try to be able to take myself outside of the box. Where I think the way to be able to survive as artists, and again, like, kind of touching on being able to collaborate, is you sometimes have to be able to get out of your home base.
Of
Especially
course.
now when it comes to the arts, it's really great to be able to support the United States and support all the. But there's so many other companies, there's so many other people, there's so many other small indie and independent artists everywhere else.
Hmm.
I hate to say this, it sometimes just makes more sense to try to work along with them than focusing a lot of the time your energy here.
Well, and the globalization being what it is much easier. I mean, the fact that you and I are speaking from separate time zones on opposite ends of the country currently in real time with zero lag is really is
Amazing.
mind blowing for me as a child of the '80s. This is the future, and that makes collaboration in between artists into a different beast than it was even really 10 years ago.
Especially when podcasting really started to flourish because I remember years ago, it used to be a way to listen to conversations or kind of talk shows and things. Obviously, you had television, but you had radio shows. You know, you,
Mhm. Exactly. Yeah.
you tune into the radio and you'd hear something like this, or some guy being like, "Hey, welcome to 103.4. We have our guest today." And you're just sitting there, you're listening to this whole thing. And that kind of like transitioned over into podcasting where, you have video input and now not only just audio. And that transitioned all the way to like YouTube and to Rumble and all of these different places. And
Hmm.
like, if you get yourself stuck as an artist thinking old school, which again, I don't think there's anything wrong. I think there's something really cool about having that old school aesthetic.
Hmm.
But if you're able to progress with the times and be able to advance, you get stuff like this.
Yeah.
And that alone just baffles me because I've had a filmmaker on here where he's doing projects with people in Belgium, in Canada.
Right.
They never met. They never met each other. They're all over on video and they're sending information back and forth.
When my so I'm old enough that I remember when Gmail was invented and came out, and it was by invitation only first, and I got an invitation, and I ended up inviting a buddy of mine who I had written music with for my whole life, and he and I began what today no one would even bat an eye at, but it was super weird back in the early 2000s because he was living in Seattle and I was in Reno, and we would write music together. I would write and record something, and then because there was a gigabyte of storage, which back then was like fucking mind blowing, I would send him the song, and then he would put his stuff on top of it and send it back. And so we started doing this thing, and we were not able to do so in real time, but it was sort of the beginnings of that, and it's been really interesting to watch the progression of that as technology has marched along and improved and gone from there. It's been pretty cool, and sometimes these collaborations are they're mind blowing, really. The stuff that they're able to come up with, not in the same space, and so it's sort of redefined what space, same space means.
And also, like, speaking of literally physical space, right?
Uh-huh.
I even remember a time where a 500 megabit, like, flash drive was like $25.
He's absolutely that,
You
yes.
know, we, like, growing up, like, having a computer that had, like, 50 gigabytes was,
It
whoa.
was crazy.
It's
It was
crazy. Like,
crazy.
50 gigs? What are you going to do with 50
What are you
gigs?
gonna do with it exactly? What do you
Yeah,
even need that space
like,
for?
are you gonna like burn all your CDs because like you have that whole like slider over there? Like that was just a lot. And today, you have creators that are dealing with. I was watching where this guy had like 50 terabytes.
Mhm.
50.
That that's incredible.
I can't even. I can't.
Fathom
I
fathom
can't
that
even
something of
fathom.
that size.
Right. Like we're still in this like that alone, just to be able to understand as a filmmaker, as a producer, just being able to be as a creator, the amount of stuff that you're able to do at your fingertips. Like, you can go out, especially as a filmmaker today, I kid you not, and make a film just like Disney. Like, as if you're
Mhm.
Walt Disney Productions from start to finish. And make it as if probably the same quality as Disney.
Yeah.
What? How? How is that even freaking possible? And the thing is, like, obviously there's an age gap, but the fact that I can't even fathom the idea of like this never existing when I was a child.
Right.
This was just not, and now it's just here. Literally do that right now. Like, go out. It's crazy. And that's like what,
And
20
so
years?
it's kind of interesting to look at that and think about the progression of how things have gone, because what made Disney so incredibly over the top and popular was the fact of the quality of their stuff, the quality of the writing, quality of the animation, and how everything was done. And in each sort of those generations, those decades, if you will, they were the tops at what they did. And now it makes me curious as to if because technology has come up to that and people are able to do something of that same quality, if that is going to dilute everything, and that we are expecting now the baseline of what our expectations are going to be is this crazy beyond amazing looking production that is super polished and requires terabytes to be able to to fit the opening scene onto stuff. Further to that, it makes me wonder if there is going to be a pushback in 10 years of people being like, screw it, I'm going back to film. And then that's going to be the new avant-garde of people shooting to 8mm, whatever it is.
Well, you do have people like Wes Anderson and Quentin Tarantino that still.
Right.
The thing about it is, this is my personal opinion, and I've said this before. I personally think that the truest Joker that we've ever gotten that is the closest to, like even like Cesar Romero, which he
Mhm.
was goofy as fuck in that TV series. It's very hard to watch. But was Quentin Tarantino's a Joker with Joaquin Phoenix? I mean, I think that it added in realistic elements. Gotham City kind of felt a little bit more like a real city.
Mhm.
It felt like New York. It
Of course,
felt
of course.
100% like New York, and I guarantee they filmed it in New York. Uh, but that was just amazing right there. It wasn't like, crazy over the top. Like if you really like break down the story, it's pretty, you're dealing with a man that has a mental condition. He plays clown. He's sick of the system. And then you have a person like Wes Anderson, which again, I know he comes from a cushy family. He's never really like he's just kind of outlandish and he could just spend whatever kind of money. But the man has a way with films that's just like the Grand Budapest Hotel is like a great example.
Yes. Yeah, 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 yeah.
I don't care about his background. I don't know what the man does, but like, you got the Wes Anderson filters and the people making the Wes Anderson TikTok video. I'm sorry, it's not like his films. He has this thing
Mm-mm.
with miniatures, and I fucking love his miniatures. By the way, I think that's the most
His
genius. Oh,
his work. So I was watching a video of a buddy of mine. His name's Taylor Hughes. He's a comedy magician, lives in Southern California. And he just released a video on YouTube a couple days ago about how to make a special as a comedian or as a magician specifically. How to get your content filmed and then out onto YouTube into the cloud so that people have access to your work and to be able to see that and how that will help you grow as a performer. And one of the reasons why magicians have a hard time doing that is a lot of time, he says in the video, magicians are afraid of people stealing their act because magic is all based off of secrets. And I've got my magic library on either side here behind me. The secret is we publish all of our stuff in books because no one reads anymore. That's the best way to hide everything is right out in front. But he said, you don't need to worry about people stealing your act. If you're worried about that, the only thing you need to do is to make it more personal, put more of yourself into it. And then that is going to make that more and more unique to who you are. And your style is going to grow and become more solidified. And put that into Gen Z terms, your brand, you're building your brand. But it's true. And, Wes Anderson has a vision of the story that he wants to tell and the way that he is going to tell it. Tarantino, again, when he writes, he has a certain cadence to his language and a way that he shoots. When other directors would cut away to extreme gore, he closes up and puts it in slow motion and high contrast. But there's a reason that he's doing that on an artistic level. And I just love that level of self-understanding to be able to say, no, this is my vision as an artist. Being an artist really is sort of the intersection between being fearful about your work and that it's not going to be good enough and that it might not be accepted by others, and being arrogant enough to being like, no, but you should absolutely watch it. I deserve the work that I've put into this and the ideas that I have. They are good enough to change your life, and you should check it out. And it's an interesting balancing act.
it is a very interesting balancing act, and it kind of speaks to even to the times. Because even now that we have this advancement of technology and things, there are still ways of being able to balance those things out.
Yeah.
Where you don't always have to over asphyxiate on technology. I mean, I was talking about this last night where it seems like CGI has gotten worse since Shrek came out in 2000, even though that is
Right.
so bizarre to. Because, you compare like Shrek to the Snow White movie that came out. I'm sorry to bring back bad memories. I apologize.
You're good.
But but you compare the CGI in that film to Shrek in 2000, and I don't know about you, but the CGI in the Shrek 2000 is way better than that movie, and it's like that's 2024. That's 24 years later.
Just because technology is available, it's the Jurassic Park thing, right? You were so concerned as to whether or not you could do it, you didn't stop to try and think about whether or not you should do it. And I don't know. Just because technology is available doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be better than something that came before. Christopher Nolan, when he started into his Batman trilogy, he rejected completely the use of CGI, and they had offered him a budget to be able to do it, and he said, no, I'm not going to use CGI. I actually want the Batmobile in Batman Begins to be jumping from rooftop to rooftop because it looks real, because it is. And I don't know. CGI can be amazing. Shrek is an amazing, look at that, and it can be used responsibly to be able to help with special effects. But it always looks like CGI. That's one of the main reasons. If you remember back, Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, the Indiana Jones film with Shia LaBeouf, that whole scene with the ants and then them swinging from tree to tree with the monkeys and the whole thing. All of a sudden you were watching animation and you're like, what the hell is this? I mean, that film flopped hard. And that scene specifically, those two were panned by critics for being an irresponsible use of CGI. And that was 15 years ago.
Well, it's crazy because even with Batman, and there's a lot of controversy because not everybody likes the two Tim Burton Batman movies. I personally love the two Tim Burton Batman movies.
Yeah, 100%.
Because Tim Burton, he made it like as if it is. It's a cartoon that came out in the 40s. Batman is not supposed to be real. Like they're supposed, and he really leaned into that very, very heavily. And then what happens is because these days, like people got so used to the Dark Knight, like it's like, Tim Burton's. It's like that's just as cheesy as the Batman TV series from the 60s. And I'm like, have you watched the Batman TV series from the 60s? It's nowhere close to what Tim Burton. If they had Tim Burton in the 60s making the TV series, I think it would have been a lot better. I really think it would have been a lot better.
It is a time capsule, stuff like that. I mean, the Tim Burton's Batman films, that was when I was a kid. I have a very vivid memory of that coming out, that first one, and watching as I was driving by the movie theater in my town, like lines around the block to see this, and I had never experienced that before because it was new and crazy and huge and dark and a lot of my friends didn't know what the Batmobile looked like because it was moving too fast and it was too dark to check it out. We had to wait until photos came out in magazines later on to be able to actually get a good look at it. And so, yeah, I don't know. I think it's comparing apples and oranges, and it comes back to Tim Burton's artistic vision for Batman was not quite a comic book, but it was also not that the Joker set in real life. It was sort of, it existed in a space in between the two.
Yeah.
I don't remember if it was the one that had Mr. Freeze, Arnold Schwarzenegger, and the other. There was one that I was not particularly fond of that went very comic book.
Was it Batman Returns? Because he did. I think Tim Burton.
It was. Tim Burton did the first two. He did Batman and Batman Returns. Those were a thing. And then Michael Keaton took off as Batman, and we got somebody else. I think Val Kilmer did one, and then George Clooney did another one.
That's right, the last two in the 90s.
Yes, and one of those, and I think it was the one that Clooney was a part of, rubbed me the wrong way because it went a certain direction with cartoons where they filmed it so that a lot of the stuff looked like panels in a cartoon, in a comic book. In terms of the framing of what was being used for filmmaking, and it just rubbed me the wrong way. It doesn't mean it was horrible. It was just not my bag. But it was definitely, the director was like, I'm not doing what Tim Burton did before.
Batman and Robin.
It was there. It is. Okay. Yeah.
Robin. With Val Kilmer. I'm not a total fan of Val Kilmer's portrayal of Batman.
Same.
I think Michael Keaton did a really good job, and so did Christopher Nolan, but Christian Bale, sorry. But the thing that I love the most, and this is going to sound bizarre, Danny DeVito's Penguin.
He's great.
Oh my God.
Over the top.
He gave he gave the best Batman, the best Batman Penguin I've ever seen, ever, because it's Danny DeVito. And then like years later, It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, and it's just like, oh my God. And he, by the way, it's interesting. I didn't know this when he did It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. He threw in some puns and lines that he did as the Penguin.
Of course he did.
Of course
because that's who he is.
Of course. He did the quacking, which was weird. I was like watching a YouTube video about this, and they went to some of the episodes, and I was like, oh my god, and you don't even pick up on it because he's like doing like that weird bit in the bar or whatever, and you're like, and then when you put the pieces together, you're just like, oh my god, that's just, that to me is art and creativity, and
Yeah.
just shows like the level of some actors will go. Like, you don't have to love Jack Nicholson's version of the Joker, but it's so freaking memorable. Come on.
You know, I actually really like that portrayal. He's not my favorite Joker, but I like the portrayal because his vision of it was as a mob boss. And, you know, a mob boss who goes far and beyond what's happening and uses his sort of, you know, power and fear and all of that, but he portrayed it as something from the mafia, which was great. He went with the vision, and, you know, when he did it, he was the first one to earn $1 million in Hollywood for a role. That's how much that cost him to, or that he won to do that that particular character. So it was pretty cool.
Yeah, I think, for me personally, I think Joaquin Phoenix, and then number 2 would probably be Cesar Romero, because as bad as a TV series is, I don't know what it is. It feels like Cesar Romero was the only one in the entire TV series that actually took his role seriously. Like, no offense to Adam West. And that does really show, like, when you're watching even scenes with him in the TV series, and it gets cringy, and then all of a sudden it goes to Joker, and then you get a little uncomfortable. It gets a little bit unsettling, you know, and then when he starts laughing and cackling, you're like, oh my god, this man's a sicko. Psychopath.
Exactly that. My favorite Joker, and it's kind of not fair because it's not live action. It's Mark Hamill in the animated series.
Oh,
and
I didn't even think about that. Oh my god, that was amazing.
Mark Hamill is my Joker, and it's just based upon his perspective of being this crazy sort of a psycho who lives on the outskirts of, you know, what does the Joker do all day except for trying to plot to kill Batman and kill a bunch of people and laugh about it and do it in funny and weird ways that are sarcastic and worrying. And I don't know, he just, when I remember reading in an interview that when he came in to read for that, when they would do episodes, they eventually started to just put a camera on Mark Hamill as he was reading the lines. Everyone else was sitting down at the table to do their stuff.
He used to make the faces.
He would be embodying the whole thing, and then they would just send the video to the animators and just be like, just do that. That's what the Joker is doing. So, I don't know, pretty incredible.
I remember that show came on, it came out late at night. You know, and as a kid, like when I was watching like reruns and stuff, at night on, you know, on your CRTV, and it's just like holy, because it was really freaky and kind of scary. Like, that was like the most sadistical, most darkest version. Like, no, obviously it's animation, but like compared to like all the other,
and I mean that art style was something that had just been pioneered, where all of the cells were drawn over a black background instead of a white background, which gave it that look. So that version of Gotham is, by definition, it's dark. Everything fades to black around the edges and in the negative space, and it just gave it this look. And he came in and just nailed the role, which was incredible.
He really did.
So, hey, I've super been enjoying this conversation. It is roundabout time for me here, round 11. I hope that's all right with you.
No, that's fine, man. I wanted to, before we wrap up, just to go over. I know you got a website, you got social media. Where can these wonderful people find you?
Love it. So, my name, Sasha Mereu, Mereu. I'm on Instagram and Facebook. I want you to go over and check out fairview.net, fairvu.net, and that is my company. We are working on creating a virtual space for musicians to be able to sidestep all of the middlemen and create a direct relationship in between bands and their fans, and having their fan base directly support musicians for their art, which is going to then allow musicians to create more and better art for their fan base. And going from there, check out our content, please. We've got a YouTube channel. And otherwise, I will see you out and about. Google me, my name's out there, and a whole bunch of random stuff comes up. I do visual art, I'm a magician, I'm an actor, I play lead guitar for a punk rock band called United Defiance, which is based out of the San Francisco Bay Area. So I'll see you somewhere, out on the road maybe.
Man of many trades. What can I say? Listen, Sasha, thank you so much for coming on. To anybody out there, if you want to check out more of the podcast, you can find us at Awesome Pod everywhere and anywhere you listen. Back. Catch you. All right. Peace out.